Hello. ANA2 from Mystic Circuits is one of those useful modules that can take a tiny little bit of input and turn it into a lot of things. At its heart, ANA2 is a logic module, but unlike traditional logic modules, which would require that you feed them gates only and output gates only, ANA2 can actually take any type of signal and logicify it. It's one of those modules that can also perform a lot of roles depending on how you patch it. Eli from Mystic Circuits calls it a Swiss Army knife of happy accidents. And it's one of those modules that I think can hang out in a case and really always do something interesting with copies of signals that you were probably already using. And in this demonstration commissioned by Eli, we're going to learn how it works and we're going to make some sounds and modulation with it. So the ANA2 has 2 channels, and each channel has 3 sockets and an attenuverting knob that goes with it. And this top half is the input section, and then this bottom half, ringed in silver, are all of the 9 outputs that you get from the combinations of knob settings and what you've fed into the inputs. There are 2 channels. This little row here is channel 1, and here's its corresponding attenuverter, and this little row below it is attenuverter 2, and this little piggy went to market. Now, even though we only have 2 channels, you can actually blend 4 signals together, because the outside sockets on each of the channels, 1 and 2, are both inputs, although they differ a bit in where they go once you plug them in. This left one is your kind of standard input, and you can then attenuvert the signal using the knob. Middle position, 12 o'clock, is 0. The rightmost input, though, is like a bonus. It's a summing input that is added to this left one after the attenuversion has happened. And then this middle control is an input, but it's really a CV input, which will control the amount of positive or negative CV getting applied. The middle one is effectively a CV control for this knob, aka a VCA. And we can use the knob to limit the range. And then if we feed a voltage in here, it will move the control through this range. That way you can make what's coming into the input on the left be dynamic, and then it will be added to the thing that's on the right. What does all this mean in practice, right? Well, it means that if you patch something into only the left, then this becomes an attenuverter and allowing you to make it positive or get the inversion of it. So very useful for kind of fine-tuning a sound and also performing something. You could send an LFO or something into here and then squiggle a filter positively and negatively using this control. If you have nothing plugged into the module, however, this becomes a DC offset generator, and it will send a fixed voltage depending on where the knob is. And that's really useful as like a macro controller. If you multed, that is send multiple copies of that voltage out to multiple things, then it's like a macro. You could control like 5 things with this one knob. Or for example, with like 2 HP modules that have tiny little knobs, you could send the output of this into the FM input of that control, and you'd have a big physical control that was more ergonomic to use. And then if you patch something only into this rightmost input, then this effectively turns this into an offset generator. You'll still get the signal that was going into the rightmost input, but you'll be able to move it up and down in the sort of CV realm. And that's really useful, for example, if you fed a sequencer into this right input and then quantized it. It would mean that you could effectively have the sequencer playing a phrase and you could move it up and down the keyboard, but always have it be in key. And that's really just what happens with one single channel used by itself. The whole point of this is the madness that can occur when we have multiple channels which are combined with this interesting analog logic. So let's go through all these outputs. We'll see what kind of things we can do with them. Let's talk about this first row. Min, mix, max. The mix in the middle is just literally the mix between the 4 inputs. So we can use this just as a mixer, literally, to mix things. A lot like the center channels on a maths, in fact. But what are min and what are max? Well, min and max are, by any other names, and or. And what the AND means is that min will only pass a signal if one signal and the other are high. And max will pass a signal if either signal or the other signal are high. So max, for example, is a good way of combining gates together. If you put two gate signals in here, you will always get a gate passing through that or that. But min, which is AND, is particularly interesting when you put gates into it, because it means that both gates will only pass if both are high. Now this could be useful. In fact, I've done a patch before in a previous video where I could quantize the taps of a manual trigger by sending a regular clock into one of the inputs and then sending the output of my touch controller into the second input. And because it would only pass a signal if both were high, well, that meant that my tapping finger was quantized to the beat. Let's try it. So if I take the end of cycle from this maths and feed it into input 2, and I leave this first one unpatched, I'll take a copy of my end of cycle and I'll feed it into a kick drum. Oof, like that. Let's slow it down, shall we? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the min, or the AND output, and I'm going to feed it to another piece of percussion. That's quite fun. This is going to be the snare. And now, if I turn this up, when this signal is high and this signal is high, it will fire our snare. So this is like me tapping on my little tappy tap module that I had. It's actually an ears from Musical Instruments. Do you see or hear how the snares fall only where this is? But that principle, I think, is really useful. It allows us to quantize things so that they happen on the beat. That's interesting, isn't it? So if I take the other bit of maths, this little bit, and I feed that into the one with enough of this, make this a little slower and more sparse. Suddenly we get a little interesting rhythm where the little virtual drummer is kind of just filling in snares at a point that virtual drummer, who is in fact called ANA2, is choosing to let them fall. And it's whenever the 16th steps of the maths are high and my LFO are high. Note, it's an LFO here that I'm sending, and it's triggers here. And I think this is a good example of how ANA2 can blend different types of signals. I can blend an LFO and gates. And turn it into a sort of clocked drum machine. A fun one. I'd like to go one further for a slightly weirder drum machine example, where we have two maths cycling like they're LFOs, which they are, and being fed into inputs channel 1 and 2, and you're hearing the sound of a kick drum triggered by the rightmost maths. And then if I tap the max output, aka the OR, you can hear that there's a bit where the drummer just sort of goes a bit wild and plays again. And then if I take the cut output, which is this weird sort of hard to explain thing, and then I feed that into my hats, it just sounds really interesting. there's a really lovely kind of like skippy sort of swung feel that you can get. Now I use the rightmost channel of maths to change the speed of the two LFOs equally. So this LFO is controlling the speed of these LFOs. And then those LFOs are being mangled by Anna to derive two other gates. Oof. I've got drums in the palm of my hand. Okay, so we just combined an LFO and gates, and we used min, aka and, to do it. But what if we were to do it at audio rates? What would you get? Well, we've got two Dixies, and so I'm going to send in a couple of sine waves, because they're otherwise quite plain and simple, and you're going to get a more complicated waveform out. Imagine that you've drawn both waveforms on top of each other, and then you take a Sharpie and you draw the lowest most waveform that you can. With them both overlaid, you trace them both and you draw the lowest one possible. Well, that's what's going to come out of min. And then the opposite is true of max. You're tracing the top of the waveform. So let's take one sine wave into 1, another sine wave into 2, and then let's listen to the min. Oh, mate, that's not a sine wave at all. It's had its head chopped off. I added a little bit of mimeophone just to spook us out a little bit. We're getting into drone territory. And the usage of this is the simple fact that with two oscillators, I now have an interesting way of creating a third shape. I have all of these outputs available to me now, and I could blend them all together to create an interesting, strange hybrid. For example, let's try the box output. Oof, that's box. Let's try a few of them. Let's try step. Oof. And then let's bring box back in. And let's pan these bad boys. Love it. Ooh. Ah. We're getting a little bit of interesting animation with those two, aren't we, by turning the dials? And this middle section, X, is our control voltage input to modulate what the knobs are doing. So why don't we modulate it, mate? I believe it's modular, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's what Tony Rolando would have wanted. Wah. Phil, we need to drop an octave. Oh. Okay, let's just pause this for a sec. I'm just cutting there a little bit. And what I've set up is a sequenced the two Dixies with the Droid motor fader performance sequencer so that I can play it. And what I did is I also sent the Droid's gate trigger to trigger the two maths envelopes that are controlling the Ana. So it's like a complete kind of voice with VCAs. And as I adjust the length, the presence of one or the other, or the combinations thereof, create different tones, a bit like an FM synth. Ooh. Add a bit of like delay to it. For this like really weird, gronky sort of like dirty odd texture, which is with this kind of interesting like sort of harmonic distortion in it as well. And of course you remember our other outputs. Well, we've got 8 more. So I've got the XOR and cut here, which if I fade up, turns this into just an absolutely weird, colossal stereo thing. And reminder, there's absolutely zero filtration going on here. We're just hearing the raw outputs of ANA panned in stereo. Ugh. It's pretty like nutty, but if this isn't kind of what modular synths are for, weird ass voicing that isn't possible with like, well, sure this is possible in a computer, but I don't know a plugin that does it. Make your own Max MSP thing, I guess. And then woo. We have all the fun of changing the tuning. Ugh. Ugh. Yes, interesting, isn't it? You can make weird waveforms, and you've got a lot of them. Tap them all simultaneously, pan them, and my great goodness, you have a weird plethora of things to play with. So this middle row, XOR, cut, and mag are 3 different other processes. XOR being an exclusive or, according to the manual, a somewhat unique take on a VCA, which clamps down on the signal when it peaks. Cut, a kind of bizarre non-linear combo, which gives wavefoldery sorts of shapes, and mag, which is the difference between the 2 channels. How they differ, that's the signal that you get. As with all these things, I think it's really hard for someone to just say, oh, it does this thing, as if you're supposed to know what that is good for. In this instance, I'm really enjoying making tones with this. And so let's listen to what the differences between the 3 are. So if we take our sines, we've got a kind of fifths tuning between the 2. To which I can add a little beat. Hear it as a mixer here, and if I give you the saws, here we're just using ANA as a pedestrian mixer, but nice to see it can do it. Let's go to cut. Now I'm filtering it through the adver. When you compare that to the mix, you hear how different the cut is. It really is a completely different sound. And then XOR. then let's try it with sines. This is with squares even. Oh. Yeah, I like that. And then this is XOR. And if I adjust the pulse width, sounds great. That's the mixed output, just so you understand where we're beginning from. Oof, that's nice. That's mag with this Dixie up an octave. Then what if we take like the maths here, feed that into the plus input to push this even further? Interesting. That's nice. Let us modulate that. Go into the middle input. Nice. That is so interesting. Super dynamic. Mushing these waveforms in interesting ways that you don't get from just mixing them together. That is interesting. In this example, we have two pedestrian sine waves being fed in. But using cut, we're able to get quite an interesting, pointy, and very non-sine wave-like signal by blending the two. These two sine waves are at different pitches. One is there, and the other is there. We can sort of perform that. But of course, we can animate this, just as I'm doing by turning the attenuverter dials, by sending voltages into this middle lane. And I have maths. So if I send in the LFO of a maths, or maths doing an LFO, you can hear that it blends in this oscillator now and then. We can do the same thing on the other side. So, a gentle reminder, this is just two sine waves that's creating this. If I shift them up and down, what next? So this bottom row is step, swap, and box. We've played with these a little bit already, but to be specific with step, it's actually two track and hold circuits. Track and hold is a bit like a sample and hold, except it will pass a signal until a gate is received at its input, and then it will allow the signal to pass through. However, in ANA2, we don't have a separate input for the triggering. It just derives it from the input signal. I'm actually not sure how this works, quite frankly, but I have an interesting example here where I have two signals being blended together. That is a slow LFO on this maths and an audio rate signal from this Dixie. So an audio rate signal and a slow LFO. Whoa. And if I apply them to the filter on adver, this blend of audio rate and if I blend in a bit of traditional envelope as well. Now with a bit of futzing and slowing these down, you hear this kind of mixture of stair-stepped and held. Speed that up. And next, swap. What swap does is it is a switch that outputs either channel 1 or 2, depending on the heights of the channels. As the manual says, at audio rates, this creates lots of clicks and stuff and can be used as a distortion. But here at sub-audio rates, I want to use it to kind of swap from one modulation source to another. And so with this yellow cable, I have another output from the Droid, which is a step sequence. And this second input is the Dixie 2. And when I get the input levels just right so that they key off of each other in the way that ANA2 likes, you hear this wonderful like interplay where one plays then the other one plays. Wow, is the Dixie 2. The stair-stepped thing is the Droid. It's like perfect. It's just like a very interesting thing that you could do with like a sequential switch, but ANA2 does it by just choosing what to listen to. We're in danger of becoming very underwhelming, and that's a thing that I am completely fine with. It's good like that. And finally, for this little tour of the 3 rows, this would be Box, one that we've looked at before, and which basically is a window comparator that creates these 3-step square waves, which, if you vary the input, you can get this very interesting tone, which is kind of pulse width modulation-ish, kinda. But also the Box input is very useful because it can create gates from control, like smooth control voltages. So you can use it to generate gates. You could send in sequences and it will create gates from them too. Here we have 2 sine waves, again returning to the fact that with 2 very smooth and otherwise, you know, smooth waveforms, you get the complete opposite. Nice squared off tones with this animation control, which we can get by adjusting the multiply inputs. That's alright, isn't it? And that's 2 sine waves. Doesn't sound like sine waves. Now we're filtering this through the advert. If I open it up, this is what we're messing with. Pretty intense, right? And I did say I would modulate. I've got another maths here. Oh, what is that? So odd. Oh my gosh. Flipping heck. My son's just arrived at the door. He's holding 2 dandelions. Here they are. Francis, come to the microphone. Can you go, ooh?
Ooh, Mum.
Say, that sounds good.
That sounds good.
Thanks, Pickle. Thank you, Francis.
Ooh, Mum. That sounds good.
And what if we take the step output, for example, and feed that in here? Or the cut. Ugh. Oof. So, thing that is able to take sine waves and turn them into just a wall of weird wavefoldery, kind of cross-foldy oddness. Give you 9 outputs. Feed your filters. And in general, speak well to the whole thing of, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to plug things in and turn dials and see what happens. Nice.